Welcome back, everyone, to CXplorers podcast with Jasper Nastor and myself, Daniel Cheung. This is episode 5. Jasper, how's it going this morning?
Doing good, man. Busy and at the same time happy. Monaco Grand Prix, very nice result. Happy for Charles Leclerc. So yeah, kicking everything
Uh,
off at a very high note starting this week.
Definitely. I think the sport's getting interesting finally, for this year at least. I know that we wanted to cover a couple of topics from episode 4, and I just want to break down for our audience kind of what we'll be talking about today. And the first really is around understanding some of the different AI trends in the contact center space, as well as how to prepare for some of these trends. And I think what's most impactful or potentially valuable for some that are really looking to learn more, be more applicable, and really find better use cases is really some resources that we can provide. And we'll drop some of the links below in the description in terms of some of the online learning materials, whether they're ebooks, webinars, online seminars, or even different types of channels and podcasts to really get folks immersed in the world of AI technologies and different trends. And if we have time, we'll start to cover, the wonderful world of ChatGPT Omni in terms of multimodality generative AI, some of the future implications, definitions of it, and really what are some of the applications and benefits we can see to different industries and verticals today. And of course, some of the challenges and even future prospects, Jasper. And that's really where I'm keen to pick your brain on that in terms of where we see multimodal generative AI being applied and how that can enhance the customer experience and make it more frictionless for those that are actually providing that level of support on the agent side when it comes to the
Absolutely.
BPO
Yeah.
world. So I guess, Jasper, maybe we'll kick off the first topic here in terms of understanding some of the AI trends coming up in the contact center space. Did you want to maybe share with us some of the latest trends in AI affecting the BPO industry, whether it's automation, natural language processing, or NLP, or even predictive analytics?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know we've talked about IVA, Intelligent Virtual Agents. What I think it was episode 4, if my memory serves me right. Now, it definitely has been picking up a lot of steam. I know we're going to talk about GPT 4.0, but here's what I think, where we can connect the dots from what we've talked about from that previous episode, where multimodality, right now, not being able to just talk to Gen AI via text prompt. Now you're able to do a lot of things with the new features of GPT 4.0. And in terms of IVA, you're now going to be able to have a much better experience and seamless experience from a customer experience standpoint, talking to actual AI that has feelings. I can remember like the whole demo that GPT 4.0 did, changing up the language every now and then, being able to add humor into it as well. It makes up to a whole seamless experience from a human element standpoint. And I think that's one of the things that has been missing with the previous IVA technologies that we've actually talked about with episode 4 with GPT 4.0 and a lot of the new developments within the AI space for contact center. I am seeing a lot of vendors applying and integrating their engines with the latest and greatest of OpenAI. So intelligent virtual agents, man, it's going to take over the whole contact center space. I feel like in the probably the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, there's a lot of new enhancements going on with it. And just on a side note, I actually read this uh, LinkedIn post where they were comparing the age of AI to human age. So they're saying that where AI is right now, it's currently at a 9-year-old kid. Like imagine right now AI is a 9-year-old kid. Imagine once it goes to being teenager, preteen, adult, right? It's just going to be an exponential change and growth in the way that we're going to be experiencing new technology in the next few years.
So I just finished watching Atlas on Netflix. I don't
Oh,
know if
I
you've got a
haven't
chance to
watched
check
it,
it out.
man.
Yeah, and it made me think, right, because it was very similar to iRobot in the sense that the main
Oh, okay.
character was not the biggest fan of completely integrating with AI. And a lot of that kind of follows that character journey in terms of how she starts to trust it. And with all of these innovations and trends coming up in AI, the piece that I always want to think about is what about the older generation that hasn't grown up in this age, right? I know for us millennials, Jasper, the way that we engage with our service providers is multimodal,
Yeah.
right? It's I just need to get someone on the phone as quickly or even on a chat. And I think even the days of calling into a call center for support, that's the
Yeah.
absolute last resort that someone wants to go through.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
on the flip side of that equation, you have a multi generations before us that are still keen to talk to someone, and that behavior is very hard to change because people are products of their time. They're used to what they're used to. And I think a lot of people that like to talk to someone on the live phone, whether it's a customer support agent or whatever the case might be, it creates that relationship and level of trust. And where do you think we are right now when it comes to like some of these Gen AI technologies? I know that they've included humor to kind of soften some of those conversations, make them more personable.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, I think people can still tell if they're talking to an AI, because again, sometimes the AI will certainly outperform in terms of that experience what a customer service agent can be. So I'm just wondering, how do we navigate that landscape to kind of address those that are quote unquote a bit more old school in terms of how they want to do business and engage with customers versus the evolution of customers now with us and Gen Z and soon Gen Alpha, who will be using a lot of these technologies to engage, right? And I think that's where we can't lose sight of those folks that are kind of stuck in their traditional norms of how they want to engage with folks versus the new age of engagement, right? And how do we kind of balance that out?
That's actually a pretty good question, Dan. Right. So usually what we do, and also with my consulting experience, right. First things first, you have to understand your customer landscape, right? Because say for example, you're mostly on the technical side of things, right? No, most definitely a lot of your consumers and customers are the ones that are more a little bit like you and I, Dan, right? Where we would rather go through chatbot and all the other means of interacting with customer support before we would actually want an actual human person to converse with, right? So identifying what's going to be your customer base would be extremely important. And I know with a lot of the data gathering that a lot of the contact center do, you would have there some personal identifying information, right, that you can actually work with. Right now, once you kind of know what your landscape is, then you can try to look into, right, what types of solution can I implement, right, as part of growing my business and using AI to be able to actually expand my whole customer experience journey, right? So one of the things that I usually suggest is first start off with non-facing AI. And when I say non-facing AI, these are the things that we've talked about on previous episodes, like conversational analytics, right? You have their voice to note beyond QA, all those things that can help you out, maximize your daily efficiency as an operations, and be able to elevate your contact center even further. Now, kick it off with those types of solution first, because if you are actually the type of company where customer experience is always now, I mean, yeah, all of the companies customer experience is number one, right? So start off with non-facing AI first, like the ones that I mentioned, before you actually dive into the ones that are more, that can just immediately impact customer service in a way that similar to, I think we've talked about the, I can't remember what article was that, but there was this, I want to say Amazon chatbot, where it was just asking, or the customer was asking, bad things about the product, and it was actually spitting out, it's making conversation, and you don't want that. Right now, that
Mm-hmm.
itself immediately ruins the whole AI experience. So yeah, just be more careful and just understand your customer landscape first, and kick it off first with non customer facing AI as part of your journey for innovation.
Got it. And I think as generative AI creates a stronger use case in terms of how contact center operations can improve efficiencies, improve the customer experience, as well as reduce costs, that's where the traditional kind of contact center quote unquote headcount can really start focusing on some of the more challenging
Yeah.
call drivers or reasons for people calling in terms of, hey, if everything else is automated and the generative AI can start talking to my tier one types of customer support and
Yeah.
troubleshooting. Now what's essentially going to be hitting my contact centers are people with a higher complexity of problems where they do need to talk to someone to provide more context, have someone on the phone, and work with other team members to find those resolutions for them. So I think that's really where and we'll talk about this in a little bit as well. I think the landscape of where the contact center and the needs for a contact center are starting to evolve. with some of the generative AI, where a lot of organizations that I've been talking to, they're not necessarily interested in bringing on, a 5,000 headcount call center with 5,000 agents spread across two different centers, but
Absolutely.
it's more so making that investment to say, hey, I want maybe 1,000 people in my contact center that are very effective, that really understand and have a strong language level of articulation to troubleshoot and resolve customer issues, and overinvest in terms of the technologies that can drive better scalability and leverage generative AI to address the lion's share of the volumes that are currently hitting the call center right now. And I think that's really where a lot of companies are starting to make that pivot as they see the impacts of how technology can save some of those costs. Now,
Yeah, yeah. Sorry
to
to
kind
cut
of,
you off there, Dan.
yeah, yeah. So I think as part of the segue here, it's, if I'm an executive or I'm a leader at an organization that's really been tasked to start to look at, how do I navigate this landscape? How do I learn more, and what resources are out there? So I know what questions to ask, because I always say, right, the quality of the answers are going to be dictated by the quality of the
Exactly.
questions that you
Yeah.
ask, right? And I think a lot of times when, even when you're buying your first home, right, and you don't know left from right, you don't know what questions to ask in terms of making a sound purchase, that education element is really important. And I know, Jasper, you're all about kind of looking at what resources are available there. Could you maybe share some of the platforms or ways that individuals can really start preparing and getting a better understanding for different AI trends and helping to hone their skills in this area?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Dan. So nowadays, it's just information overload, right? So you have a lot of free resources, you have a lot of paid resources here and there, but I guess I want to speak candidly to all of our listeners. Like, a lot of it can actually go with the free resources that you have out there. You have YouTube, right? You have LinkedIn resources, you have articles, you have Google's. I mean, there's just a plethora of options that you can actually go through, right? So to begin with, I think it's important for you to kind of cover like the basic and the fundamental elements from a certification and a Coursera Academy standpoint, right? So I actually took this one. It came from Google Academy. It's I remember. Let me just check my notes here. Yeah, it's actually Gen AI fundamentals. So it kicks you off with what Gen AI is, right? In a very surface level overview, right? You don't have to be someone who's been working within the space for quite some time for you to be able to understand the first few courses. And from there, they kind of reel you in, with a little bit more specific on the Gen AI types, right? Because everyone is saying Gen AI, right? But no one really knows like what is that, right? So they kick you off with that, and that's very important to everyone, even if you're within the AI space or not. I think even tier one agents can actually benefit from that by just understanding what Gen AI is and be able to speak to it on a chauffeur knowledge level. That's very important. Right now, once you kind of go through those very basic certifications and fundamentals, right, now you can actually start exploring a little bit further, right? Similar to this podcast, listen to podcasts, similar to CX Explorer podcast, right? Go through those, right? And a lot of the universities as well right now has been deploying a lot of graduate business school certification process that you can also enroll to. So by then, right, you can start to get immersed, right? Get to understand, what's going to be, what's hot, what's not, and at the same time, we all love, fireside chat, webinars, online activities on LinkedIn. So all of those resources are definitely helpful. You don't really need to sometimes, pay for premium stuff just for you to kind of get into the weeds of what AI is. A lot of the things you can actually get for free.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And we'll drop some of those links into the
Yeah, yeah,
description
definitely.
below as well. And you mentioned, like, in terms of like Coursera, I know there's like edX, Udacity, LinkedIn Learning that have a lot of these AI fundamentals. And really the point of these is just to get well versed enough in terms of
Exactly.
really
Yeah.
understanding what generative AI can and cannot do. At the same time, I've also gotten a lot of questions from the industry in terms of, a lot of pipe dreams, which I think are really, it's amazing that people are kind of thinking this way, but at the same time, the risk element and the time to deploy and the work kind of needed to get there, I think the waters are a bit muddy there in terms of really understanding what's step one, what's step two here. And I think a lot of our listeners have an understanding that, when you look at generative AI, the machine learning models, whether it's through GANs or VAEs, and then having the transformers in place, they get the impacts that it can potentially have on their customer engagement models. but those don't just kind of come out of a magic lamp where you can
Yeah,
apply them for your
flip a
business
switch.
case, right?
That's all.
For sure. So with the recent news and excitement around Chat GPT for Omni, I guess I'll let you kick this one off because I know multimodal is kind of an area that me and you geek out a lot
I
about.
know.
But do you really want to maybe walk our audience through what are some of the enhancements made to GPT Omni in terms of multimodality?
Absolutely, for sure, for sure. Right. Well, oh, just sorry, I'm checking if I was on mute. Okay, yeah, for sure. ChatGPT 4.0, it combines text, image, and a lot of other data formats. Now, I guess the best way for me to kind of explain this to our listeners, earlier today, I was working on a slide and I have this whole process flow format, indicating what's going to be the title of this stage, that stage, and I needed to put together like a quick one sentence description on each stage. What I did, I snipped the whole slide, gave it to GPT-4o. Can you give me one sentence description on each stage? Boom. That's it. It gave me what I needed. So yeah, it gives you a lot of option right now for you to be able to interact with Gen AI models, especially for ChatGPT. I know, Dan, I mentioned to you something about a large action model, right? So if you're using ChatGPT on your phone, if you open up the camera, be able to point it somewhere, be able to point it in your face for you to be able to kind of showcase to GPT-4o what you're doing, what's the meaning of that. It's going to be able to interpret all of that, right? So we're now way past the point of talking to Gen AI with just prompt and text, right? It gives us technically almost all of the ways to communicate with Gen AI. So that's going to be very helpful with all of the use cases that we can probably think of. Now, I know we're going to talk about use cases and implications probably on the succeeding episodes, but definitely it opens up a lot of ways if you're not someone who's used to talking AI, if you're someone who's used to just taking pictures and all of that. I mean, it serves a lot of wider audience right now from a customer standpoint than with GPT-4o.
Yeah, I think even in terms of like for myself, I know with 4.0 and generative AI, where I see, the biggest benefit to my role is really just thought starting and helping to visualize different ideas and the way in which that content is presented. Right. In no way, shape, or form does it replace kind of the creative elements and how we kind
Absolutely.
of connect certain things together, but I think it does save a lot of time in terms of some of the design and creative elements in terms of how to convey a certain message, especially one that's more technical in nature across. And to your point, right, when I look at even our industry of working in a B2B space, if someone from a restaurant even has like a menu they're trying to upload, and then we're trying to get agents really comfortable with understanding those elements of a menu to take digital orders, whatever the case might be. I think that's really where a lot of that automation can be really cool to save a lot of back office type of work and to also even help potentially analyze, just like what we've seen with different technology providers like Observe AI doing sentiment analysis. Is I hope that it can get to a point where, based on the images and certain content that it's reviewing in a multimodal manner, we can start getting quote unquote something similar to a sentiment or a trend analysis in terms of more than just text based, right? And I think that's
I
really going to be
know. Yeah,
exciting because one of the things, again, bringing humor into the conversations or into a
it's
chat,
difficult.
I think
Yeah.
personalizes the AI a little bit more to make it a bit more human. And it'd be cool to see what works and doesn't through, deeper learning from, AI technologies that can say, hey, you know what, this wasn't well received. We didn't really get a lot of laughs or chuckles in terms of when we did this joke. It's maybe we can try different humor bites or a different modality in engaging customers through other, techniques and strategies in a live engagement.
Absolutely, Dan. I couldn't agree more. I know that's one of the things that you've asked me initially, right? Like, how do AI sentiment analysis navigate through those cultural nuances depending on the geography, location, right? Of what where that customer base is at. So definitely, Dan. Yeah, piggybacking on what you mentioned, just being able to utilize, neural learning and deep learning for you to be able to go through all those highs and lows, tonality, and even images, right? To your point. So yeah, pretty excited to see how
So,
the whole
so
industry
Jasper,
will
what
shape
are
up.
sorry to cut you off, man. If we look at some of the different industries out there, what do you see as potential applications or benefits in terms of like multimodal generative AI?
So multimodal generative AI, I think the first thing that pops in my head would be for sorry, not app developers, but app developers in a way where iOS, Android, right? Because those guys, they have a huge user base, right? Say for example, like Duolingo, man, right? That's the most basic one. Duolingo. I know you are able to converse with Duolingo via text and via voice prompts as well, where it's asking you to kind of pronounce this word, right? So if you kind of use Duolingo as an example there, right, from a multimodal standpoint, you can now even talk to Duolingo in a way that it's going to give you a whole conversation, right? It's going to be a free flowing conversation as opposed to something that's a little bit more scripted. In a way, it's going to help you out with your the language that you're learning. It's not going to be anything specific like open a door or whatnot. So it's going to give you a lot of ways of learning if we're just talking about Duolingo specifically. So yeah, definitely app developers within the iOS and the Android space, they're going to benefit a lot because they're going to have a wider reach of audience when they test out a lot of the applications that they're going to be going through. And it's immediately human interaction because everyone has phones nowadays. Not sure if that
What
kind of
about
answers the
Yeah,
question
it
there, Dan.
does. I'm even thinking more specifically outside of like programmers and developers. Like, what about with healthcare? Because I can imagine, and I know Zuckerberg and Chan are working on, the virtual cell, right? And I think there's a strong use case there if we can look at medical imagery combined with clinical notes for better diagnostic and personalized treatments. That's really one of the strong uses is that we've kind of seen as kind of a pipe dream where a horizon of where we want to see AI go.
Yeah,
But even on like the human computer interaction that we've been talking about today, like creating more natural and intuitive interfaces, whether it's voice assistants, whether it's having those virtual kind of avatars, and creating those to be more less robotic and more human, I think is a really big opportunity in that space. But from what I've seen, again, right, it only takes one emphasis on the wrong syllable for people to identify this is a robot because no one normal
I,
really will talk like this. So that's kind of another area that I'm really excited about. And I know I was listening to the radio the other day, Jasper, and I think Scarlett Johansson even made a big like there's a big case
yeah,
around Sky, right? It sounds exactly like her in
exactly.
terms of ChatGPT. And I actually picked Sky as the voice because I'm like, oh, this reminds me of her. This is exactly the girl that was on it. And then lo and behold, it kind of became this whole issue now, right? Where now it's like, are people or is AI even now these technologies able to make a voice so close to Jasper, but just slightly off, where technically I can make a virtual avatar of Jasper without his permission there, right? And I think that's really where the infosec and the governance around all of that can be a very dangerous space. And I always worry too when we see a lot of these free AI type resources and companies start
Yeah,
using it to advertise with like avatars of celebrities that they're trying to do. I'm just wondering, like, how do we, or how does the industry kind of govern that, or what are the potential pitfalls of not governing some of those elements properly? Because the end goal is to make it less robotic, and my concern is that it will just die on the vine because of some of these um, copyright issues or legalities that we fall into it that, quite frankly, I don't think a lot of people have thought about.
yeah. If I'm being honest with you, Dan, it's something that everyone within the space right now is actually trying to figure out. Right. So right now, everyone is trying to put governance structure on how you can do and develop AI in a way that's purely ethical. And I go back to one of the things that we've discussed back then: responsible AI deployment. Right. So if you're a company, trying to adapt an AI technology. So you have to put a responsible AI practice in place within your organization that aligns towards a lot of the values and a lot of those policies and practices that you want protected within your company. So it's not going to be something that you can just ask your vendor. Okay, like how are you sure that you're not breaching any ethical stuff, right? So it's supposed to be you as a vendor, as an organization, to put that safety practice in check and be able to pick the brains of everyone, right? Within your organization, may it be IT, may it be HR, may it be executive level team. So it has to be a collaborative effort for the whole company for you to be able to put that guardrails for responsible AI adoption.
For sure. So, just in closing, to kind of recap some of the things we talked about today, Jasper. So, a lot of excitement around Omni and multimodal AI, generative AI, in terms of some of the use cases it can have. We'd also do encourage our listeners check out some of the links that we provided for some of the free
Yes.
courses, platforms, and resources. I think education is really important, so everyone's really speaking that same language and ask quality questions when it comes to AI trends and potential use cases for their business or what they're seeing as well. And again, really with some of the future implications, some of the guardrails that you talked about, the industries that can really see benefits right off the bat with multimodal Gen AI in terms of content recommendations, human computer interactions, or really just automating a lot of the time consuming and tedious tasks to really focus on more strategic and creative elements, I think is really where the landscape is going. And I think to my earlier point, right, not everyone right now is going to be looking for a 5,000 person headcount type of call center, but more so, how do we make the investment in technology to do more with less and create a robust architecture that's scalable to drive future type of call drivers that may be more complex in nature to resolve.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think, yeah, we'll drop the links in the description below. For those of you that haven't, drop us a like and subscribe as well. And Jasper, keen to hop on with you in the next couple of weeks to talk about some of the other trends and some of the hilarity that may be going on in this AI space in terms of what we see
For
that
sure,
doesn't
man.
work. I think that's a really strong kind of example that we could potentially talk to for our listeners in terms of like where have we seen it go off the rails and what can we really maybe learn based on Jasper's experience in this space in terms of what not to do when it comes
Yeah.
to AI integration and Gen AI rollouts.
Absolutely, man.
Awesome. Well, Jasper, always a pleasure speaking with you. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.